So what made you get back into collecting? I don't want to say just cards, but anything, in your life. Like when did you kind of get back into it? What age you were, and just go from there.
So going back to 2006. Now, I'm not going to say that I got back into cards in 2006 because that wouldn't be. I don't think that would be honest. But what I did do is we got Breeze and we drafted Reggie Bush, and Reggie Bush for the Saints was kind of he was number 2 overall. He was just absolutely red hot. And so I did look into, okay, what are Reggie Bush cards going for, just out of curiosity. And I did buy some cards, but did I get back into cards and collectibles? No, I just bought some and I was just like, oh, this is kind of cool just to have, this is something I used to do as a kid. Now, fast forward a long time, 2018. And I kind of joke, what was I, 37, 38 at this point, but I hit my midlife crisis. This is how I really kind of explain it. But instead of buying a motorcycle and, shotguns or whatever and join a gang or whatever, I got back into my childhood stuff, and I think it was something that I think I just kind of pushed it down into my, I don't know, to be honest with you, I don't really know exactly how it went down, but maybe it was kind of part of like therapy, maybe it was like a way to think about my childhood in like a nice way, because, we talked earlier about it. There was some not so fun times, that I'd like to forget. So this was like, oh man, like this is and then when I investigated, okay, so what's new with cards, comic books, action figures? Then I saw there's third-party grading. Then I saw there's all these different, avenues to buy, like eBay's nuts, and you can buy, sell, whatever. And so it felt like a totally different world. So 2018 is when I got back in, and I bought like a Jim Brown rookie card. I bought a Pete Maravich rookie card because I was like, these cards I would never have afforded. Like when I was a kid, I'd never be able to afford these. And even then I spent $213 on the Jim Brown rookie card at a PSA 3. Now it's like an $800 card, but during like the big, like 2021 spike, it was like a $2,000 card. But, and same with the Maravich, so, but and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I spent $200 on a card. Like I'm like, it's complete idiot. Like who does that, and then I looked, and I actually got into comic books because I looked at trading cards, at sports cards. And I was like, man, there's not really a whole lot of volatility here. Cause I was looking at like, can I buy and sell, kind of like, look, there's all these different buying and selling options. Maybe I can buy, sell. When I was a kid, I couldn't do any of this stuff. So there's all this tech now. And then grading, like, what the hell is this? Like, and what's PSA? Like, why would I buy PSA? Of course I'm going to buy Beckett. I know Beckett, BGS, that's what I'm going to buy. Yeah. Not realizing, the history of PSA. And then I got caught up on all of it. And, it's, the rest is history. But third-party grading added a whole new element, to it for me. And so I just kind of slowly started buying some stuff, but I did notice there was more spec on the comic book side, where like you get in front of a comic book and then a movie comes out and then you can resell it and kind of flip comic books in 2018 and 19. So I did more of that, and I bought some stuff that I ended up holding, but my goal there is to fund my hobby with buys and sells, and then kind of buy stuff that I could hold on to. So 2018, 2019, at halfway through 2019, I started to notice there was sports card, like newsy type or like buy sell type channels that were popping up on YouTube. And before then, I really had only seen on YouTube, like how to fix your toilet videos, so it wasn't like, I didn't know that YouTube was actually like a place where people, do anything on it, especially in cards, and like hobby stuff. So I found some of these channels, and I was telling my wife, I'm like, I feel like I could do this. Like I could do what these guys are doing, because nobody back then was really doing any sort of high production stuff the way they are now. Now there's comic book channels, there's card channels that, hell, Topps has got their own like, YouTube channel, and they've got all sorts of stuff going on. But back then there was nothing that was consistently out there. And so March 2020, pandemic hits, and I was like, all right, well, I've got nothing but time. If I'm not going to do it now, then I'm just not going to do it. So I started to do it like in my basement, with my iPhone. Some things don't never change. I still use my iPhone, but just started making daily videos. My thing was, I'm going to make a video every day, just consistent type stuff, whether it's like cards that I like or sports card news type stuff, that's going on. Like this company's doing this or that. And what was happening is there was a buildup of people that I just got lucky. I was not putting out like amazing videos, just timed it right to where people were searching for that. And I was there, so I did grow fairly quickly between March 2020 And I would say like end of 2021, like my first 18 months, it was pretty quick growth just because there's a lot of people searching and not a lot of content out there to find. And I think I started kind of to get a little bit better over time, try to add more personality into it and stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how I got into content, and it's been awesome. I've been going for, 5.5 years at this point.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, like, from 2020 to now, like, do you think anything's changed, like, with the whole YouTube space from when you started to now, like, with cards or whatever you're gonna do on YouTube? Because I know you've done both comics and cards.
Well, it's funny because tomorrow's video is going to be all about this. In the trading, in the sports card world, there's a big battle of like, is sports card content dying? I think it's actually happening in comic books too. But a lot of people are talking about this, like, does content suck now and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's just that there's so much more of it. Yeah, I actually think that from a viewer standpoint, it's the best time ever, really, for collectibles content. You can argue about who's better or worse or whatever. You like this or you like that. That's fine. But options are abundant. Options are abundant to watch different personalities. And there is always going to be new people coming in and trying it. And, so to me, I really like where it's at. I wish more people would quit so that there was less people, doing it, as my stuff would be easier to find. But, I'm kidding. But so when I hear that sort of thing, like, oh man, the content's just not any good, or the pandemic boom's over, so now nobody cares about trading cards. I just don't really buy into it. I just think that it's just that people don't have time like they did during the pandemic to sit. We were all sitting around doing nothing, had nothing to do. So naturally you're going to get on YouTube or Netflix or whatever, and you're going to be doing that. I was watching Tiger King, during the pandemic. Like, would I watch that now? Actually, I'd probably still watch that now, but I mean, like, I think it's just different times, but I like where it's at.
Yeah, I agree with you in the fact that, like, there's so many people doing content right now that there's I don't want to say too much, but you have a choice of everything you want to watch. So
yeah,
you may not be like, the flavor of the week for one person, but you are for the next. But I will say that because of the collecting hobbies kind of, settled a little bit, after what's happened over the past couple of years, the prices going down. I'm not going to speak for cards because I don't really know, but comics at least, that I feel like, one, it kicked a lot of people out of the hobby because they lost some money buying comics at a certain point and then taking big hits. But I agree with 100% what you said, that there's too much information out there. People are back at work. They don't have much time focused on the collectibles anymore. There's still a ton of people that show up to shows. I'll go to some local, card shows by me. There's like a high school 2 towns away. They have one once a month. I'll go check it out. There's tons of people in there. So it's not like hobby's dying, but like, there's just a little bit too much content out there about that. I agree with you there.
Yeah, I think people are doing the hobby, like kind of like what you said. I just went to the national. That we've never had a more attended national, going all the way back to the early '90s, like '91 when it was red hot in Anaheim. There's more people. It was absolutely insane out there, and I'm sure that San Diego Comic-Con was similar. And all the, I didn't make it to Heroes Con this year because I went up to Fanatics Fest in New York. But everything is just is bustling. But it's a different. I feel like we can't really compare, like, it's apples and oranges. If we're looking at like channels today versus a channel in 2021, there's so many like variables that are different. And you said it, there's just people that are out and about. Sports are back on, shows are back on. Think about, like, during the pandemic, they weren't even like making new shows. Like the part of the reason why The Last Dance was such a huge documentary is because it had already been made and it was coming out. Well, so everyone's just sitting at home trying to find something to do. My favorite show, I can't, like, season 5 Stranger Things, finally, like, we've been waiting on this thing. The pandemic slowed down a lot of the production, but it's like now people just have a zillion options. We're about to enter football season. That's something else for people to go do. I mean,
100%.
So I think with content, it's like, manage expectations. You just got to manage it. Like, I'm not sitting around crying if my video doesn't get X amount of views. At this stage, I put out what I want to put out. I try to make it kind of an even thing where it's something that I like, but I also think that the audience might think it's interesting. We're always trying to find that balance. But I like where the channel's at. Your channel is doing great. Something I'll go ahead and just kind of announce it here on your show. I haven't talked about it, but I'm going to, create an 80s, 90s nostalgia focused channel, just kind of, and inspired by a lot of what you were doing too. Just your Motu video is really, really good. And that's the sort of thing that's, sports cards are part of a much larger passion for me. And I feel like that channel, when if we're thinking like, hey, I'm going to be doing this till I'm 80, like that's something I can talk about forever, so it'll be, I think, a nice complement to, the sports card stuff that I do. And it's just going to be really fun to make. That's going to be kind of like my baby that, I just grow over a long period of time. But again, its expectations are, I'm just going to do the best that I can with it. And there's a lot of competition in the 80s, 90s nostalgia space too, but just going to have a blast doing it. And I'm looking forward to, working with you, talking with you about it. Cause you're one of the guys that's kind of like me. You're not just a one trick pony, you're not just a comic book guy, and I'm not just a sports card guy.
I'm happy you're doing this. I know me and you spoke a little bit before over the past couple of weeks about it, and I'm excited for what you're going to put out, man. I really am. You're right, because for us at around our age, like that nostalgia based stuff, not only is it fun for other people to watch who've grown up with that, but it's fun to us to create, right? Because we lived it. So like, I feel like it's such a good mix of, we love that stuff, so we want to talk about that stuff. And I think there's a ton of people out there that you can do it with, and that's what makes it good.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of what, comic book YouTube is very similar. When you're making comic book videos and you get to talk with Swaggle, you get to talk with some of these other guys. Like, it's not easy when you're 45, 48, 40, 50 years old to make new adult friends. Like, it just does, especially that are into a nerdy hobby like that we're into. There's people that will say like, oh yeah, I remember G.I. Joe, or, oh yeah, I remember that, but they're not into it on the same level that some of us are, so I think that's the difference.
All right. So I got two quick questions. I know we're butting up against some time, but one, I always ask this to people, but what does your family, like your wife and your kids, think about you collecting all this stuff?
Well, so it's relegated to one room in the house. So I think that's one thing of note too. I don't have like I don't have stuff sitting on the mantle. I don't have like a statue of, I don't have a statue of Venom in our bedroom, or something like that. So it is in one spot of the house, although but I do have a floor that is, it's kind of a man cave, but really like all the stuff is in one room. So it's not as if it's just taking over the house. I think that for my wife, likes that I love it. Like, I think that she can see that it's, how much I'm into it. And then also I do stuff. I went to GalaxyCon Raleigh here, locally here. GalaxyCon's a great show, kind of like a mini pop culture. I wouldn't say mini. I mean, it's a pretty decent size pop culture convention. It's comic books, but it's got, I like William Shatner was there speaking. And her and I sat and listened to Bill Shatner, and it's like, damn, that's cool. But like, my daughter's really into scary movies now. She's about to turn 13, and she's like big into Scream, like the Scream series. She can't watch, like, some of the stuff is like nuts. Like, you're not watching like Terrifier and all this stupid stuff. But so GalaxyCon, they're the two main, Billy Loomis and oh God, what was the other guy? Matthew Lillard plays the other killer in the first Scream. They were both supposed to be at this Raleigh GalaxyCon, and we were going to do a whole photo op where they're like trying to stab us and stuff. And unfortunately they had to bail. They had to cancel at the last second, but her and I had a blast just walking around that show and going and doing that. And for me, that's like connective tissue with my kids, to where if they also really enjoy it, then that like nothing makes me happier. If they're like, if I can find some of this little nerdy 80s and 90s stuff that they also like. Stranger Things, another perfect example. It's an 80s show, basically. I mean, it's essentially like it's exactly like, it's a Goonies, Ghostbusters. It's based off of all that stuff. All my kids watch it except for my youngest. My 10-year-old is too scary for him. And then my wife doesn't like scary stuff. But, the fact that I can do a lot of the stuff with the family, my wife likes that. If it was something where I was just like, it was just me isolated and nobody else liked it, I think the fact that I collect a lot of things, I'm into a lot of things, and they're also into those things, some of it at least, I think that certainly helps. And then with the channel, the channel does generate income to where I can use channel money to then buy the things that I want. So it's not as if it's a crunch, on the family finances.
That's awesome. I wish I could get my wife to go to like certain cons with me or certain shows. That's not going to happen. The extent of it is she'll come to like the MCU movies because she likes that stuff. And obviously the younger one is into the superheroes. So we go do that stuff together. My older one is a big sports head. So we'll do all the sports stuff together. He plays a ton of sports. So my last question for you, man, and I'll let you go. And I really appreciate you joining me today, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about PSA and comics, because I know you're a big PSA guy. What do you think about PSA entering the comic space? Do you think they have a chance? Do you think they have a good chance of overtaking CGC? I know it's going to take some time, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I think that they're just going to be a great complement to CGC. And I should also disclose I'm a PSA partner too on my Sports Card Dad channel. So take my bias as I say it, but what I will say is I'm really a big fan of all four of the major grading companies, whether that's PSA, Beckett, CGC, or SGC on the sports card side. So I'm a fan of third party grading because when we were kids, there was like just grown men arguing about like, no, this card's mint. No, it's near mint. Gen mint didn't exist back then. No, it's fair. Like everyone's fighting over it. So I'm a huge fan believer in third party grading / authentication. I don't want to buy a fake vintage card. So with that being said, I think the PSA is going to make a splash in comic books. However, though, I think it's going to be similar to the way WATA and CGC are on the graded games side. Another thing that I buy, graded games, love it. But if you look at comps, between WATA, which is owned by Collectors, which also owns PSA, and you look at it next to CGC stuff, which CGC is new in that game. They've been in the graded gaming, stuff for maybe like 18 months, maybe a couple years now, but they kind of burst on the scene not that long ago, but it comps out around the same as the WATA stuff. And I do think that the PSA stuff will as well. I do because, if I remember correctly, I believe that they got one of Beckett's graders, right? One of their big graders came over and is running it. So, I think that's a big thing. It's funny how they all kind of do this to each other. CGC sports cards took Beckett guys, and that's who started their sports card grading stuff. So they're all kind of taken from each other. But I think the fact that PSA has reputable graders there, and they're not just like, hey, we're just hiring people, right out the gate off the street, to do this. They've got reputable people in there that are running the show that have been in the business. I think that helps. And then the PSA brand is a monster, and I think that if you're a comic book person, and even if you're a diehard CGC, no matter what, I'm never buying a PSA graded book. What we can all take away that's good is, of course, PSA will keep CGC honest. It's probably the only grading company that can do that. If we look at just kind of the size of these grading companies and who's respected, CGC will now have to think twice about, well, maybe we should make better cases, that people can't crack open and get into as easily. Maybe we need to improve this or improve that. Whereas, over the years, they really haven't had to think about that. So I think it's a great thing for the hobby, for buyers, that you now have two companies. And some people I know still swear by Beckett comic book grading, and that's fine too. I mean, there's, different options, but I think 5-10 years down the road, the two that emerge as kind of the two are CGC and PSA. Well, what are your thoughts? I'm curious. You're a big comic guy. I mean, what's your take on PSA?
I think it's good. I mean, obviously there's a lot of people who don't like the label. There's a lot of people who don't like the case. I personally love the case. I think it's fantastic. I actually just sent something into PSA. I'm not going to say what it is because it's something totally different. I think you're going to enjoy it too when I get it back and show it off, because it's something that we talked about here today. But cool. More competition is always good. People are like CGC guys or only use CGC. They're going to attack PSA and so on and so forth. The PSA guys who've been using them for cards already I think most of them are going to go over to the PSA side. But at the end of the day, you know what matters? How much are we spending to grade our stuff? And number two, how much are we getting when we sell our stuff? That's the only thing that matters. So if those two things are equal, it's fair game for everybody. If you'd like to become a sponsor here on the Mighty Rewind podcast, make sure you reach out at the Mighty Rewind podcast at gmail.com.